Hi, my name is Rick Edgeman. I'm professor and chair of the management department at Forte State University in Hays, Kansas. I also hold appointments at Aarhus University in Denmark, at the University of Southern Denmark, and with the Shingo Institute, home of the Shingo Prize for Operational Excellence. So I'm sitting here in my office today and thought I would talk to you about the issue of concept generation. And predominantly we're talking about product concepts, but you could equally apply many of the techniques that you're going to learn today to generation of service concepts. This is only one snapshot of how it is that you might look at concept generation, but it's a very commonly used sort of process. And it presumes that you've already done certain things, one of which is that you've identified customer needs. Now, there are a lot of ways that you might identify customer needs, one of which is that you might take that information from some sort of a mission statement for the project that you're working on. We've covered other techniques in other presentations, other videos that you can download from this particular YouTube channel. So for example, we've looked at ethnographic research, we've looked at heavy-duty data analytics, we've looked at social intelligence gathering, we've looked at a number of things. Surveys, focus groups, customer complaints, and so on. There are many sorts of sources that you can use for obtaining customer needs. We're assuming that you've also probably established target specifications for that product or that service, and that you've looked at competing, assuming that there are competing products or services. So what we're going to be looking at here is that one white box on this slide, which says generate product concepts, and equally again, it could apply to generating service concepts. Notice the line at the bottom of this slide, which says this is part of an overall larger process of concept development. So the typical 5-step concept generation process looks like this. The first thing is to clarify the problem. Remember that ordinarily speaking, such work as this is done in product development or service development teams. And so you want to make sure that everybody is on the same page as they're beginning to look at this, or at least that they're in agreement as to what the problem is and what the approach will be and so on. Clarification of understanding, if there are any specialty terms, and so forth. So clarify the problem. We do that because we want people to have a common understanding. Sometimes what we might do is break that problem down into bite-sized pieces called problem decomposition, and we would focus on critical solutions. That is, there may be a number of sub-problems, of which some of those are more important than others to solve. So what we want to do is focus on the vital few problems most in need of solution, or that provide the most value if you can solve them, as opposed to the trivial many, the other problems that may exist or sub-problems that may exist that provide very little marginal benefit as compared to the vital few sources of the problem. So what we'd do is we'd take those sub-problems and then we would begin our search for solutions or partial solutions. And that usually has two particular approaches that we would look at. One of which is to search internally, which you see as box number 3, residing on the right-hand side of this graph. And that really means that you want to look at the expertise, the knowledge that is resident inside your product development team or your service development team. So we're talking about the individuals, and we're also talking about the collective knowledge of the group. Another approach, or not another approach, but supplementing that, is an external search. And typically in an external search, you're looking for solutions that have been developed by somebody else, some other competing organization, maybe not directly for the same problem. And that would be an external search. Now, the typical sorts of places that you look for information there would be from lead users, from experts, patent search, from literature, from benchmarking. And they estimate that about 95% of all the information that you probably need to know is actually available already somewhere out there in libraries, online, among the knowledge base of your own experts inside the team, and so on. So what we're trying to do is, from the internal search, we're trying to identify some new concepts. From the external search, we're trying to identify some existing concepts. Then we will try and combine those in intelligent ways or in innovative ways. We do that by exploring systematically. Now, in this presentation, I'm not showing you the tools that are listed under that box label number 4, Explore Systematically, but I can give you an idea of what it means. So what that would mean essentially is, let's consider just development of a simple product, a pen, a writing implement. So I've got a number of pens that are sitting on my desk. I'll hold each one of them up for you just briefly. So my prize among my collection of pens, and it's not that I have a lot of value in pens or something like that, would be the 4 that I am holding up just now. All of those come from the original Legoland in Billund, Denmark. I've been there many times. My kids have been there. I've been there for other purposes just because it's actually a very cool place to go, independent of whether or not you ride the rides or not. It's a garden, it's a theme park, and very interesting. And you can see that these are Lego pens that have been themed in different ways. Most of these themed according to Star Wars. One is just themed a little bit differently from the others. Now, there are certain things that I like about these pens, apart from the creativity that goes into them. One of which is that when I look at the grips on these, you might be able to tell that the grip is indented. It's got more of a triangular shape, and the point is that when I hold this, it's very easy for me to get a good grip, a very good grip. Also, this is a rubberized grip that this is made out of, so it doesn't slip in my hands like shiny metal or like certain types of plastic and so on. So I really like the design of this part. What I don't like about this pen would be that it's a twistable exposure of the point, and this one isn't even working anymore. Wonder if one of the other ones still works. Not so much, not so reliably now. So what you can see is that some things fail over the course of time. This one, oh, look at that, not this one either. So none of these right now are functioning, and these were not inexpensive pens. I have had them for a considerable length of time, probably 10 years or more, but none of them are actually allowing the point to be exposed right now. Nevertheless, the concept for exposing the point is a fairly common concept, which is a fragment of a concept, which is to expose the point that you're going to be doing the writing with by twisting. Okay? So far we've looked at 2 elements of this, 2 main elements. We've looked at the grip. We've looked at how is the point exposed. You could say something about the shape of the grip, the material of the grip, the shape of the grip, how the point is exposed. That is at least 3 different factors that you might look at when you're designing a pen. Here's a pen. This is from Toyota, one of the main production plants for Toyota in Japan. It was a gift while I was there. The point here is exposed by taking off the cap. This pen, interestingly enough, could have some potential other uses. You can see, for example, that it has this long tapered end. And on that long tapered end, I could use that for a lot of things, including things maybe that I wouldn't want to do on screen, like clean out my ears. Nevertheless, I could do that. Here are 2 pens from the main university that I've worked at in Denmark for a very long time, Aarhus University. One of these, both of these actually, are eco-friendly. They're both plastic of some sort, but they're made out of a sort of material that at least looks like plastic that biodegrades much more rapidly. In one case, the point is exposed by twisting. So one of these is exposed by twisting. The other one is just your typical clickable exposure. So when we click it, there it is. There's the point. So what do we have so far? We have at least 3 different ways just to expose the tip: twisting, clicking, capping. Okay, we have different shapes for where we would hold this on the grip. This is more or less tubular shaped. These are, whether you could tell, the Lego pens, they are more triangular and they have indentations here. Okay, the grip is rubber. The grip is plastic, but not a smooth plastic. There's actually a bit of a texture to it if you were able to hold it in your own hand. This one is more tapered. The one from Toyota, a bit more tapered for the grip. So we have a lot of different things. 2 pins from the unit, the Shingo Institute that I work with. Both of these are more or less identical, but there are some differences other than the color that's probably obvious to you. So one of the differences would be the length of the clip. You might be able to tell, no, the clips are fairly similar in length, but they're different in shape. Therefore, they actually hold on to, let's say, a shirt pocket or some other thing that they're being clipped onto a little bit differently. Moreover, what you might be able to tell is that the pins are of the same length. However, where the clips start, in one case, is at the top of the pin, and in the other case, a little bit further down. What does that imply? What that implies is that if you're putting these, let's say, in a shirt pocket, that one of these pins will set up higher above the shirt pocket than the other. So there are a lot of different factors that are go into designing something just as simple as a common writing pen. Okay. What we would want to do with something like a classification tree or combination table is we would look at some of those main drivers, something like what is the material of the grip? What is the shape of the grip? What is the main material that the pen is made out of? How is the tip exposed? Okay, those are all things right there. And so what we would do is we would say something like, well, gee, how do we expose the point of the pen? One factor. But that one factor has different ways that it can be fulfilled to expose the point of the pen. Click, twist, uncap. So for that one factor, there are at least 3 different ways that that might be done. For the shape of the grip, we had something like, let's just say, triangular, circular, and maybe something more like a typical writing pencil, wooden pencil, maybe 6-sided or 8-sided, something like that. Okay, so let's say 3 there. So far we have 3 combinations, or excuse me, 3 ways of exposing the tip, 3 different materials, 3 times 3, that's 9 combinations. What else? Something like the main material of the pen. Is it wood? Is it rubber? Is it cardboard? Is it plastic? Is it metal? So you can imagine a lot of things there. So if you throw that in, now you've got a 3rd factor. And before you had 9 combinations, but each one of those 9 combinations of how you expose the point and what the grip is like shape-wise can be combined. Let's see, that's 9 combinations, can be combined with each of the 5 different materials that we might look at. So now all of a sudden you have 45 combinations. Each one of those combinations is a distinct concept. Okay. So what we need to be able to do is generate a lot of concepts, and afterwards what we need to be able to do is to systematically reduce the number of concepts that we consider seriously. That will actually go into the next sort of topic that we'll jump into after concept generation, which will be concept selection. And finally, what we'd do is we would, out of all those things, out of those approaches of clarifying the problem, searching externally, searching internally, and exploring systematically, we would derive integrated solutions. That's what we were just doing when we were making those different concepts. Okay, and then we would look back at the process that we've been using and we would say, okay, are we satisfied with the process? Is it reasonable? Is there anything we've left out? Is there anything that we've included that shouldn't have been included? Were we extensive enough on looking at the different options within each of the factors considered? For example, we only looked at 5 different materials. Maybe there were 6 or 7 that we should have been looking at instead of just 5. Or maybe there were more than 3 ways to expose the tip of your writing implement that you intend to produce and take to market. So that's what the reflection is about. And remember, it's never too late to go back and redo things. It's not too late to go back and redo things because the cost of redoing things early in your process is far lower than the cost of redoing things later in your process. So when we're talking about step 1, clarifying the problem, that really is getting a general understanding, then breaking down the problem into sub-problems. And as we said, there are a lot of ways that we might obtain just that sort of breakdown and getting an idea about what the customer needs are. We talked about what those were. Search internally or search externally, those two things. Remember, just to reiterate, searching externally, lots of different sources, including lead, users, experts, patents, and so on. And what we're trying to do there is to identify some existing solutions that are already out there, even if they're being used for some other purpose, but yet can potentially, keyword potentially, be adapted in a useful way to enhance the overall product that you end up with or the overall service that you end up with as you develop that product or service. Okay, so that would be what you'd be doing with that. And remember, there are a lot of good ways to obtain that sort of data, such as the lead users, consulting experts, patent searches, and so forth. Searching internally, remember what that's about. That is about trying to understand what sort of knowledge that you have resident right there in that product or service development team that you have. Your expertise, your knowledge, those of your team, and how those integrate and form even a larger knowledge base collectively. So that's what we're after, going through that and trying to take that inventory of skills, abilities, insights, and so on. The process for that is very much like brainstorming, which is that you'd have people throw out their abilities and so on. Maybe you do it just by listing and then combining the list. So a lot of ways of doing that. So when you're trying to generate solution concepts, then there are some ways that you can do that. Make analogies. It's like wish and wonder. I wish that. I wonder what would happen if. Use related stimuli. So what would you be doing there? Oh, have customer need statements that are visible for you, for the product development team, sitting right in front of you so that you do not lose awareness of what it is that your customer wanted. Maybe photos of the use environment. In another video, what we've looked at were things like customer needs assessment, and we talked about ethnography and going to where the people actually live, to the actual use environment for a product. Not just photos, but maybe actually do some of this activity depending on its nature and what it's for in the actual use environment. A lot of ways you can do that. Set some goals. Don't stop until you have at least 10 concepts or 20 concepts or whatever some reasonable goal might be. Okay, use the gallery method. You know, when I actually guide these sorts of activities, what I say is bring your toys. And what I mean by bring your toys is bring a sketch pad, bring pencils, bring razor knives that allow you to cut and trim, bring styrofoam, bring ping pong balls that can be glued or attached to one another. Bring string, bring paper clips, bring Legos, bring Lincoln logs, bring paper cups. Do all of those things, clay, that allow you to play and create and make visual, tangible models. Maybe a three-dimensional model, maybe something as simple as just a simple sketch. But the point is, bring those toys to help you communicate more clearly what your concept is going to be like. We expect to generate crude concepts early and to refine those as we go on. Explore systematically. I gave you an illustration of how you might do that relative to the pen. And you'll actually see that done a little bit more thoroughly in another video. So exploring systematically, what is it you're trying to do? You are trying to take concept fragments that originate from your internal search, from your external search, and combine those into some logical product concepts. And we talked about that relative to the pen. And then lastly, you want to be able to reflect on the solutions and the process. As we talked about, have you been sufficiently thorough? Have you left stones unturned that you need to turn? Have you done some things you really didn't need to do that were not productive, not useful? Knowing that at least might be helpful in future product or service generation efforts that you might have. So those are the sorts of questions that you would be asking when you're talking about reflecting on solutions in the process. So there were your 5 steps. Fundamentally, these are the things that were in that graphic that was shown early on. Clarify your problem. Search externally, search internally. Combine the ideas, or some of the ideas at least, from that external and internal search. We do that, and when we're doing that, that is the systematic exploration. And then after that, be sure to reflect on the solutions and the process. There is no absolute guarantee that you will develop an acceptable sort of concept just going through this. So we will have some supplemental activities. And that is just a quick and dirty overview of concept generation. So it's not hard. It can be a lot of fun, actually, especially if you're doing this with toys in the room, so to speak. And if you have the right team put together, if you have people who are creative and knowledgeable of the situation, if the team itself is maybe a little bit cross-disciplinary, including, let's say, engineers, product designers, artists, you get the right people in the room with enough creativity and enough chemistry, and you can create amazing things. And that's what we're after with concept generation. So thank you, and we'll see you in another video maybe on concept selection.